This episode of In My Own Words is sponsored by Williams Inn Pizza and Sports Bar. Juliana Stratton is the 48th Lieutenant Governor of the state of Illinois and the first Black woman ever elected to that role. Sworn in alongside Governor J.B. Pritzker in 2019, she has been a powerful advocate for equity, criminal justice reform, and building stronger pathways for women and girls. Before becoming Lieutenant Governor, she served as state representative for Illinois' 5th District, where she championed policies to uplift working families and expand opportunity. She's currently running for the United States Senate to continue her fight in Washington. She's a leader, a visionary, and our next guest on In My Own Words. Welcome to another episode of In My Own Words. I'm your host, Corey Timms, and with me in the studio, I have my friend, Lieutenant Governor of the state of Illinois and candidate for United States Senate, Juliana Stratton. Lieutenant Governor, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, Corey.
So I've been really excited about this one. I say that on every episode, but I've been really excited for you.
I've been excited to get here. I could not wait.
I think that, somebody like you that's really trailblazed, not only as a state rep, but now statewide as the Lieutenant Governor, the impact that you've had on the state. I'm really excited for folks to know your story and to hear more about what you're working on now.
Well, I look forward to talking about it. It's my favorite thing to talk about, how we can better the lives of the people of our state, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
So in 2019, you made Illinois history when you were sworn in as the first African-American female lieutenant governor in the state of Illinois. I guess before we get going, my first question is, has that moment still sunk into you, the fact that you're now cemented in history as the first Black lieutenant governor?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for raising that. I think I remember being inaugurated in 2019, and I spoke of my great-great-grandfather, William Stevens, who had been enslaved. And I had actually gone to Mississippi because that's where he was given a plot of land after the Emancipation Proclamation. So my speech was focused on just understanding the significance of that moment, of knowing that I came from people who had been enslaved, and it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
Like 4 generations, and here I was serving as the first Black lieutenant governor. So I wanted to tell that story because it connected me to much of what Illinois is. Most of Illinois is not like Chicago, for example, which I've been born and raised in the city of Chicago. And I wanted to make sure I tapped into what I knew was in me, which is rural Illinois and suburban Illinois and farming and agriculture and all of those things that some people might not have known were a part of my story too.
Yeah.
I think in terms of the history, it certainly was an honor to make history and continues to be an honor, but I constantly think about how my role is never just to be, or just to celebrate one or one of a few or the only or a couple. I would love to get to a place when we continue in so many spaces to celebrate the many, because at that time, the state was over 200 years old.
Yeah.
And to have the first Black lieutenant governor at that time just means what have we been waiting on? And so we have to continue to open up doors, make sure that's work that I try to do, make sure that other, Black women in particular can have access to the tables where I am and make sure that they can have access to the same kind of decision-making capabilities. And I think the other thing about history is that I'm running, as you said, for United States Senator, and we've had so many history makers here in Illinois, including Ambassador Carol Moseley Braun, the first Black woman ever to serve as a United States Senator. And she hails right here from the state of Illinois, and I'm so proud to have her support on this campaign.
That's awesome. I guess I love that you talked about the legacy of your ancestry and how that kind of weaved into your story, particularly around public service. As you look out and you see, especially young African Americans that now look to you and know that something like that is within their reach, that they can aspire to be the lieutenant governor, that they can aspire to be United States Senator. How has that kind of been for you to just kind of wrestle with that?
It's like Sometimes it's mind-blowing. I think all of us, the way that I try to live my life, and I think you try to live your life, and so many of us, we find where we are operating as our best selves, whatever we were put on this earth to do. And when you're doing it and doing it for the right reasons, and you start to see how other people, like if we're operating in our best selves, other people tap into that. And then they're inspired to do the same. Mm-hmm. And I know you know what that feels like and looks like. And I just look at it in the same way that when young people come to me from our community to just say, oh, I'm so inspired, or I'm so glad to meet you, and thank you for what you're doing. And I just want to kind of play it back to them and mirror back to them. I'm inspired by them. Mm-hmm. I do this work because I want their lives to be better. I want them to have pathways to live out their dreams. And so there's this sort of symbiotic relationship where we are just kind of, when we're all just trying to help each other be better, when we're all trying to build community, when we are all coming at each other with the right motivations and rooted in love, the kind of love that we've seen our ancestors pour out, the kind of love that, our parents poured into us, the kind of love that our neighbors demonstrate on a day-to-day basis. I just think that it allows us to be inspirational. So I sometimes say, look, I always laugh and tell people I wake up, with a bonnet on like everybody else, and it's not like that deep, but it's my job. But
I love that.
But I understand that you don't always see it, mm-hmm. and because you don't always see it, it's my honor to be in a position to help others know not only is this possible, you can go way beyond me, and that's what I want to see.
Yeah,
I want to see people continue to break down barriers, and in any way that I can help do that for them, I want to do that.
I love that. I think one of the takeaways is going to be that you wake up with a bonnet on.
I mean, you all know, and that's keeping it real. Like that's what we have to do.
So I like to start every episode with a round of lightning questions.
Okay.
So you tell me the first answer that comes to your head.
Okay.
Mary J. Blige or Lauryn Hill?
Mary J. Blige.
Okay. What is your favorite book?
One of my favorite books is Let Us Descend by Jessamine Ward.
Okay, I got to check that one out.
Yeah. The most beautiful writing that I've ever read. Gorgeous writing.
What is one law you change tomorrow if you could?
Without a doubt, and I talk about it a lot on the campaign trail, Medicare for all. Mm-hmm. No one should, everyone who's sick should be able to have access to a doctor in my book, and I'm going to fight for that in the Senate.
Absolutely. Who is your dream dinner guest, living or passed on?
Well, that would have to be Miss Beyonce Giselle Knowles-Carter, who we share a birthday week. She's the 4th of September. I'm the 8th of September. And
okay, Virgos.
Yeah, I was about to say, and I feel like the Virgo energy over dinner would be wonderful. And I'm a big fan.
Okay. Who has influenced your leadership style the most and why?
Who has influenced my leadership? I would have lots of people, but I would have to say today, I'm really thinking of my dad, Henry. He's 92, mm-hmm. and he marched from Selma to Montgomery. And I keep a little essay that he wrote on my wall about that experience in 1965, and it inspires me to think of all that has happened in the civil rights and human rights movements over the years. And there was my dad, not really politically engaged, but said, I'm going to march because I want to stand up and be counted. And I think about that's the moment we're in right now. We need to stand up and be counted.
I love that, especially because so many people think that you have to be the leader in order to make an impact.
Or elected, or whatever. It's not. We use the tools and gifts that you have.
Yeah.
And we all have them.
Absolutely. Last question of the lightning round is, what's a mantra that you live by?
A mantra that I live by. So every day I say, I expand abundance, success, and love every day as I inspire others around me to do the same. Mm-hmm. And it's from a book that I read that I just took that, and I say that every day. But I also say, greater is he that's in me than he that's in this world. I don't call it a mantra, it's just Bible, just straight Bible. And just remembering that, it's not me. Mm-hmm. Greater is he that's in me.
I love that. Thank you for participating in our lightning round of questions. You flew through those.
Yeah, I mean, lightning round, let's go.
So let's start from the beginning with your upbringing.
Okay.
You were born and raised on the south side of Chicago to your parents, Henry, who was a retired now a retired radiologist and Navy veteran, and your mother, Velma, who was an educator in both Chicago public schools and city colleges. Mm-hmm. How has the south side of Chicago shaped you into who you are and your vision for the world and leadership and service?
Yeah, I still live on the south side, was born and raised, and I thank you for even just mentioning my parents, because when I think about being born and raised and how the south side has influenced me, it's all packaged in, my parents in so many ways, and our family. You mentioned my mom was a public school teacher. She taught in community colleges. She taught adults who had never learned how to read. And so they really showed me, she taught in schools on the south side, public schools. And so just really kind of taught me about the importance of education, of giving back to your community and how we serve one another. And then my father not only is a Navy veteran, but worked in South Side hospitals, safety net hospitals where people were either uninsured or underinsured. And just always saw from both of them just a real sense of caring for your family, caring for your neighbors, caring for your community, caring for the world around you. And the South Side that just has so much history and so much, you look at arts, culture, you look at museums, you look at just so much that I love about the South Side. I just feel like it was really rooted in what my parents taught me. There's that saying that service is the rent that you pay to live on this earth. And that's what it felt like, that we look out for one another. Mm-hmm. And I think that was ingrained in me at an early age. And it's what really guides me when I think about, being a public servant. It's about caring about other people. It's about recognizing it's not just about you.
Absolutely.
You can take care of yourself, but there's others that also, if you have the capacity, that also need what you bring to the table too.
I love that. So in kind of weaving in your South Side story, you went on to graduate from Kenwood Academy High School.
Broncos for life.
Let me say,
there's nobody like it.
Folks from Kenwood, there's nobody like
extra.
Folks from Kenwood. You cannot mention Kenwood without it being a whole thing.
It's a thing. It is a thing. Broncos for life. That's all I want to say.
So you went to Kenwood,
yes.
And then you went on to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, where you got your bachelor's, and later to DePaul Law School. And you began your professional career as an attorney with the law firm Monahan and Cohen.
You've been digging deep.
Oh, I do my research.
Wow.
So first, did you always know you wanted to be an attorney? And then also,
No.
what were your focus areas?
Yeah, I don't think first of all, I didn't see lawyers in my family. Mm-hmm. So I think I have one aunt who's an attorney, but I did not see lawyers growing up in my family. What I knew was that when I looked at the kinds of issues that were happening in the world and in our community in particular, mm-hmm. I knew that there had to be people who knew how to advocate and argue and speak out and work for justice. And that's what interested me. And I actually graduated from undergrad at U of I with a degree in broadcast journalism. I thought I would be a news reporter mm-hmm. or a producer of some sort. I went to the city of Chicago, worked as a video producer for the Office of Cable Communications. We were trying to get city council on television, much like C-SPAN. Mm-hmm. And my boss was a Black woman who was a lawyer. And just like we talked about earlier, that was my opportunity to see someone doing something that I never imagined for myself. And I said, I'm going to law school. Mm-hmm. And when I thought about what I wanted to do, my focus primarily was on public interest law and making sure that we created a more just society.
How was it being a young Black woman operating in what many would consider to still be a boys' club industry, especially in the 90s?
Well, we didn't have to go there, did we? With it, especially in the 90s. First of all, some of the same barriers continue to exist.
Yeah.
This is a true story. I walked into the courtroom. I probably had recently passed the bar. You go in and, there's a couple of rows where people sit. The lawyers often sit right at the front, and you go up to the clerk to check in. Mm-hmm. And one of the earliest times, I don't know if it was the first, but one of the first times that I went to the clerk to check in, she promptly told me, "This line is for lawyers only." So that's an example of what kind of old boys club we're talking about.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, she did not imagine that I was also a lawyer who had passed the bar, gone to law school, passed the bar, did all of the things that every other person in there, but some assumption was made about me by my appearance that I could not be a lawyer.
Yeah.
So that's what it was like. And I think, that experience and so many others since is why, I try to be as vocal as I can be about creating opportunities and being real about the challenges that so many people from the Black community have, so many women have, so many other people of color have in trying to break into, opportunities in certain systems. Mm-hmm. It's real. And that's why when we see now the attacks on, diversity and the attacks on making sure that we're a more inclusive society, it's really disturbing to me. I just wrote an op-ed in the Chicago Tribune about how 330,000 Black women have left the workforce over the last quarter.
Wow.
So we're still seeing attacks in ways that people don't feel like they can get in there and really not just get entry into a field, but to grow and succeed and be successful. So we have to be intentional. And that's why I try to take that posture.
What do you tell, kind of piggybacking off of that, what do you tell young women that, kind of feel that some of those barriers for entry, that can sometimes be a little bit discouraging? How do you, kind of inspire them to keep going?
Well, I thought that day when I was in the courtroom that it was her problem, not mine.
Yeah.
That I belong there, that I'm qualified, highly qualified, and know what I was there to do, which was to do my job and represent my client. But I think people have to recognize that, first of all, you are qualified, you belong in that room, you deserve to be at the tables where decisions are being made, and to not let anyone dim your light, because that's what so many people try to do.
Absolutely. So here's something that I thought was really interesting as I was doing my research on you. In the late 90s, you founded your own company, JDS Mediation Services, where you specialized in mediation and conflict resolution. What made you decide to go out on your own as an entrepreneur? Especially, I would still argue, early in your career, you now practice for a few years. What made you decide to hop out on your own?
I think the main thing for that was that, there is a skill to being able to argue in court and win. Mm-hmm. And I have that skill. I know how to argue. I know how to advocate. I can be a voice. But I was trained in mediation while I was in law school. And that process, for those who don't know, is about bringing the parties together at the same table and seeing if you can, through listening, through effective communication, through identifying needs and interests, find if you can move from positions to resolution by recognizing the underlying needs and interests. Mm-hmm. And I just fell in love with that process. Like, I could fight it out in court. I could go toe to toe. But that takes a certain level of energy.
Yeah.
I'm willing to do it when need be. But I really enjoyed the process, the sort of strategic thinking of how to get two people. Like, if we're at a table and you're on one side and you're mad and you have your position and I'm on mine, but helping people come together in a way that hopefully can preserve the relationship.
Yeah.
not just solve the substantive issues, but solve the relational issues.
Which you don't always think about.
And court doesn't. In court, there's a winner and a loser, relationship, whatever. But I really like that process. I fell in love with it when I was trained. It really suited my sort of way of thinking about problem solving. And I just liked knowing that you could leave knowing that it wasn't just a win-lose, it was a win-win.
Yeah.
And that skill set has served me so well as an elected official who has to work with stakeholders in the community, work with fellow elected officials, work with, legislators and others who have different ideas of how, even people on the other side of the aisle. That has helped me because I've honed in on the skills of listening and identifying issues and how do we work this out and how can we do so in a way that we can also maintain relationship. Yeah. So that's why I did it. And it was early. It was also at a time that I was, having, I had young children, and like so many people who have to figure out for their own lives how to make that balance, that was what I did. And I went out there and had the flexibility to both work and do what I love while also caring for my young family.
I know, especially having done it, that entrepreneurship can be scary. And as one myself, I know it all too well. Were you nervous, though, to step out on your own?
I mean, you're always nervous. I mean, there was like job with sort of steady, what you're going to get your paycheck. You know when that's going to happen. You knew your benefits.
Entrepreneurship is not like that.
Yeah, but it's I spend a lot of time uplifting small businesses across our state because I just so admire people who step out, as entrepreneurs, who have a dream, who can take that risk and go for it. Like that is such an admirable skill, and who are making it happen. Like it looks different, it feels different. Sometimes it feels a little like, whoa, what's happening here? But entrepreneurs end up being some of the most successful small business owners, and then hopefully can grow. And we need to do more to help small business owners and entrepreneurs get started and grow their business. But you're the ones that are, whether you're doing it as a sole practitioner or hiring other people, that is the lifeblood of our communities. And I know when I get to the U.S. Senate, I want to do more to make sure that we get grants for small business owners and make sure that we can help businesses. Because too many say we start and then we feel like we plateau.
Yeah.
And I'm sure lots of entrepreneurs who have that mindset are okay with a little flexibility and say, let's pivot here and there. But we need to do more to make sure that they have the resources necessary to grow their businesses. And I want to work on that.
Absolutely. So you eventually transitioned into government where you served for both the city and the county. So let's start with the city first.
Okay.
So 2005, you became Deputy Hearing Commissioner for the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protections. And then you went on to serve as an administrative law judge and a hearing officer for the city's Commission on Human Relations. First, what drew you to government after being in private practice, after being an entrepreneur? What made you decide to hop into government?
I mean, in so many ways, as a public servant, I've been attached to government. I mean, as a mediator, as an arbitrator, most of the work that I ended up doing was in the government space. And then as a hearing officer or deputy hearing commissioner and a hearing officer with the city. I also did that same work, by the way, for the federal government at the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, serving as an administrative law judge. I'm one of those people who believes that government is a force for good. Can be.
Yeah.
We're not always seeing it being used as a force for good right now, but I believe that government can be and should be a force for good. And I was working on all of those cases, not at the city, but at the federal government and at the state level. My work, and then later at the city, actually, as Commission on Human Relations, was primarily mediation and arbitration and serving as an ALJ around employment discrimination cases. And so I'm moved by helping to create a more just society. That is like when I talked about my parents, that's what I saw them doing. Yeah. That's what I saw on the South Side, either seeing injustices or knowing that There were people working for a more just society. And so for me, that was an opportunity to help government, join and partner with government to help bring more justice to the world. So that always inspired me. I loved the work that I did, and I would bring people together. Sometimes it would be management and employees and say, how do we work this out? Because everybody deserves to live, be able to work without and live free from discrimination, and to be able to go and make a living and not be subject to discrimination. And so that's the work that I did.
I love that. I think also it was interesting that you transitioned into Cook County. And I think this is where you start to see your career arc go a little from, I would argue, a more administrative law to a heavy lean in restorative justice, when you became the executive director for the county's Justice Advisory Council, and then eventually the director of UIC, Center for Public Safety and Justice.
Yep.
What prompted the switch in focus area? I mean, you had been focused on kind of like discrimination,
Sure.
those types of focuses, to now this restorative justice, criminal justice. What prompted the leap into that arena?
Yeah, there was a sort of, when I was a deputy hearing commissioner for the city's Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, I was hearing cases that had to do with businesses that weren't necessarily, I'll just say, following the rules, or something was happening on site that needed to be addressed. So I saw that connection around, like, what does a safe community look like?
Yeah.
What are good, when businesses are good partners in a community, what does that look like so that people can feel safe? And I just thought about what safety, I spent a lot of time thinking about what safety meant, what does, justice mean, and how all of that, especially as this Black, woman with a Black family on the South Side, like safety and justice are just concepts that we think about on a regular basis, and what it looks like, and how is it defined by us, not from someone who does not have a connection with the community. So when I went to Cook County and led the Justice Advisory Council, I think a lot of our work there was really thinking about, Cook County Jail is the largest, I believe still, the largest single site jail in the country. And we knew that the people in the jail were disproportionately Black people, disproportionately Black and brown, but primarily a significant disproportionately Black people.
Yeah.
And they were held pretrial. And to think about thousands of people held on this single site jail, many of them from the south and west sides of Chicago, and many of them were lingering in that jail because they didn't have money. It wasn't because they were a threat to public safety or flight risk. They could not come up with $300 if they called everybody that they knew. But somebody who had been charged with a violent crime or offense had the money and could get out.
Yeah.
And so that's really when we started having a lot of those conversations and pushing to have the conversation of, is this just? What should it look like? How should the system change? And of course, many years later now here in Illinois, we became the first state in the nation to pass, to end cash bail. Yeah. Because that does not protect public safety. Keeping people who are detained, have not been convicted, but keeping them detained because they just don't have money. And so therefore even if we don't know what the court's going to find in their case, they're separated from their family, can't work, can't go to school, all the things that would be healthy for them to do and to be productive in our communities. So I was just drawn to that work and was really grateful for that opportunity. When I went over to UIC to lead a center, the Center for Public Safety and Justice, I worked directly with law enforcement there to train them on what's called procedural justice. Again, it's not what you do, but how you do it.
Absolutely.
When it comes to building trust with communities that you serve. And so we talked about that process. What does the process look like? And I trained law enforcement all around the country around, it's not the what, but it's the how you approach, how you communicate, how you explain, how you engage, how you build relationship. So if I were to say a sort of thread, Corey, that kind of goes through all of this, it's relationship. I talked about mediation because I loved building relationship all the way through when I got to, the research center. How do you build relationship? I believe relationship is the way that we get things done. It's powerful to recognize that we don't do anything just on our own accord or as a unilateral being or isolated being. We do things in community. And that to me is where I've seen that sort of thread go through all the work that I've done.
What would you say would be some of your biggest accomplishments in your role at UIC? I mean, the work that you did training law enforcement is huge, right? Especially given some of the historical relationships that many African American and Latino communities feel in terms of their interaction with law enforcement. But what would you say would have been some of your biggest accomplishments?
I think that was the biggest accomplishment because it didn't include just going out and training. We developed the curriculum. And so that was really important, to develop the curriculum and to do so by bringing community in to help us do it. To me, I believe the best work is done, and this comes from my restorative justice background, is when we center the voices of community. What I like to say and what we say in the restorative justice world is that the wisdom is in the room.
Yeah.
You don't go outside of the community for solutions. It's the people who know their community, who love their community, who want the best for their community. They're going to be the ones with the solutions. And so I think anytime you can kind of take a model, and often training is done where, you have people somewhere in a room just typing away, but if you haven't included the voices of the community, then you're not necessarily going to meet their needs and make sure that work can happen. So I think the biggest success was just the fact that we did it rooted with the voices of communities right at the very center, and building the kind of long-term relationships that could really change the game in terms of how law enforcement engaged and built trust with the communities they served.
Awesome. And I think you're starting to see, at least from my vantage point, law enforcement be more intentional about building some of those relationships. I think obviously there's still some work to be done to solve for some of that long-term distrust that a lot of communities have based on their experiences. But I think, to your point, the intentionality of making sure that community voices are heard, to make sure that you're building real, genuine, authentic relationships.
Authentic.
Yes.
That is the key. Authentic. That's exactly it. You hit it on the nail on the head.
Yeah, because it's so easy to write off law enforcement, especially if you're in those communities. And so when you have someone that is actually really trying to build a relationship, really trying to authentically get to know you, I think it makes it easier to actually bridge that gap.
And to recognize law enforcement officers are in the community. They're from the community.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that there's just been this sense of like, it's such a separateness, and for lots of reasons. There's a storied history. But to recognize that also as community members, how members of law enforcement also want to see safety in their community and have a good relationship. So we did some unique things then.
Awesome. So let's fast forward to 2016, which was a big year for you. In 2016, you decided to throw your hat in the ring to run for Illinois State Representative, representing the 5th District. Walk us through this. First, had you always wanted to pursue a career in elected office? And then what drew you to state representative in particular?
Yeah, well, as I said, I've always been a public servant in different capacities. And I thought that I would run for office maybe one day. I mean, I didn't have like this long dream of this is my life and here's how I'm mapping it out. It wasn't like that. I just knew I was a public servant and always looked for ways to step up and help. That race in particular, running for state representative, happened. It was really sparked by, in 2015, I was caring for my mother, Velma, the school teacher, and she had Alzheimer's. And I was her primary caregiver. She lived in my home for the final years of her life. And I was her, like I said, primary caregiver. Caregiving is hard. Caregiving is hard. And it also was the greatest honor of my life to care for her in her final years. And when I was caring for her, I saw the news that our previous governor and my previous state representative were working together to cut health care for seniors like my mom. And you know how we feel about our mothers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was like,
Mm-hmm.
I saw that and I was angry. I was mortified. I yelled at the television, somebody should run against him. That is a true story. To run against my state rep, I was like, somebody should run against him. And I didn't know it was going to be me.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw a need and I stepped up to meet the need. I lost my mother the day before I kicked off my campaign for state rep. So she never saw me get to that point of winning that race. But she was with me every single day. I would knock on doors. I would talk to people, talk to voters who just knew, like I did, as I said before, that government should be for good, not taking away the things that our most vulnerable seniors might need. And so in many ways, in her honor, I ran that race as strongly as I could and won and ended up serving as state representative of the 5th District.
You know, I've always felt a kinship to that story. Mm-hmm. I lost my grandmother last year. She battled dementia, and my mom, my aunt, my sister were her primary caregivers. And one shout out to them because they deserve all of the accolades. But you start to see the importance of how those resources are in terms of just being able to maintain, because I was one that, I'm running things and I would hop in when I could, but they were the ones that were there every day.
That's right.
And so those resources become crucial. So I could only imagine how, for you, seeing that happen at the time, just the timeliness of it made you decide to hop in.
Absolutely. And the resources are not plentiful.
Yeah.
They're not plentiful. And so if you take the little away that people have to really kind of help manage what is already a hard situation, and my condolences to you, of course, and your family, and yeah, thank you to the family members that stepped up as caregivers, because caregiving is hard, but the fact that somebody who loved us, that we would have the opportunity to do whatever we can, and don't minimize what you did. I know you were busy and that there were some considered primary, but I looked at my daughters, for example, and their roles. Everybody who played a role in making sure, even whatever bit it was important.
Yeah.
It was important.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Well, I know running for office is a tough decision, especially when you decide to, hop in and you're asking yourself all the questions. Can I raise the money? Will I have the support? What ultimately made you decide to take the journey to say, I think to your point, like somebody should run against them, to I'm actually going to step out and be the one to do it?
It literally was just a decision. Wasn't even, had to make sure that I live in the district, and started talking to a couple of trusted confidants about okay, I want to do this, and what does this look like? And that's really what it was. And I think, right now I say in a lot of rooms, I always encourage people to run for office. It's not for everyone. People will engage in their own ways, but we do need good people to run for office.
Absolutely.
And there's a sacrifice. It's a lot of work, but I just felt like this was an opportunity to advocate in a space where I felt that there was, not the kind of leadership that people deserved. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing that, as I thought about running for lieutenant governor and running for United States Senate, it's that same calculation. Do you believe you can do good? Do you believe you can help make people's lives better? And do you believe that you can be someone that when they look at your leadership, they know you are fighting for them?
Yeah.
That's what I've asked every time. And it's what's motivated me. I saw a need, stepped up to meet the need. That's as simple as that.
So you run and you win.
I do.
And in 2017, you're sworn in. How did you decide what you wanted your focus areas to be? I could imagine you're stepping into, being a new state rep. You're going to Springfield. How do you decide, what what type of policies or legislation do I really want to focus on?
Yeah, it's interesting because it was such a different, you do kind of get told when you're new, when you're the freshman, you kind of come in, just like some people tell children, you get seen and not heard. But I just had so much energy. I was fired up, and I was like, I don't know how long I'm going to be here, because you have an election every 2 years in the House. So I was like, I'm hitting the ground running, and that's just kind of the person that I am. And I hit the ground running. I passed 10 bills and got them signed into law as a new freshman legislator. Wow. So in those 2 years, and you're only there from January to May.
Yeah.
So in those months, I stood on business, because I was like, I don't know how long, and there's a lot of need. And so I kind of took the theme of what I had been working on. I mean, there were other bills, but a lot of it was what I'd been working on, in the justice space, because again, continuing that thread. I passed a bill, for example, that ended school-based booking stations. There were booking stations on school property. And so if you walked into the school and maybe you walked over to the library, right next to it, there was a room where the police department would book you for arrest.
Wow.
And I remember seeing that on visiting a couple of schools. And I was like, how does this impact the psyche of a student to know that, yes, there's the library, yes, there's the science lab. Oh, but also that's where I can get booked for arrest. And
what's the expectation that you have of me?
Exactly. And Corey, here's the thing. I learned through my research, because I do research too, that they were only in Chicago public schools. In the whole state, there were no school-based booking stations. And so I passed a bill to end them. And, one of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, I remember I was working the bill because I passed it on a bipartisan basis. He asked me, well, what are you going to do with the students if they don't have booking stations? I said, they're going to do the same thing that you do in your school when a student, either has an infraction or whatever and has a need. You don't just say, okay, go on to the booking station.
Yeah.
So we ended that, and I passed a bill to end preschool expulsions, because 3 and 4-year-olds were getting expelled from school from their behavior from preschool.
From preschool.
Mostly Black boys, increasingly Black and brown boys, and Black and brown girls. And we passed that bill to really focus on how to give more resources to teachers and families to support children. Because you get expelled in preschool, you're much more likely to drop out of high school. So those are examples of the ways that I kind of took my love of restorative justice and advancing justice and brought it to the Illinois House.
I love that. So you served for 2 years, and then in 2018, you garnered statewide attention when you were tapped to be the running mate for now Governor J.B. Pritzker on his first run for governor. This obviously drew attention, as this would make you the first Black woman in this capacity. Walk us through how that happened, particularly having been a first-term state rep to then become the running mate of the now governor of the state of Illinois.
I think a lot of people ask the question, like, did we know each other? We did not. One thing that I really loved about then at the time just JB, before he was governor, is he wanted to come meet with me in my district. And there's a little restaurant in the 5th district, not too far from my home. And he just wanted to come, and he wanted to listen and learn about what were the issues in my community, what were the issues in my district, what did he need to be thinking about. And as somebody who's done mediation and a lot of that work that understands the power of relationship building and community, I just admired that. I don't think that there was really anyone else who really asked me, tell me about your district and let me come learn about what's happening in the 5th district. And I just so admired that he wanted to genuinely know. He asked really thoughtful questions, and we hit it off. Like, we had a great conversation. I was like, great. I don't know what he's going to do. He's going to run. Fine. I'm a state rep. And that was it. We went our separate ways. Every now and then we would check in, and ultimately he got to the point, which was not something that I was either seeking or even thinking about.
That was going to be my question.
It was no. I was a freshman legislator.
Yeah.
But I know he saw me get to work and be an advocate, and I rolled up my sleeves. And by the way, lesson, had I taken that time to do what everyone said and just kind of sit quietly and be seen and not heard, I'm not sure he would have known what I was capable of doing. So go ahead and do that. Go ahead and do that. But what I would say is that, he asked me to be his running mate. That's a big deal because you're now running statewide. Again, I wasn't thinking that was the trajectory. I was new. And the question or statement that I kind of made to him was, because most people know that the lieutenant governor, that is a role that you're supporting the governor.
Yeah.
And what I told him was, I'm honored, but I don't want to do this if you just want me to do what you don't want me to do.
Yeah.
What you don't want to do. Let me say that again. I don't want to take on this role if it's only to do the things that you don't want to do. Because I'm passionate about many issues. I'm passionate about our communities, and they need real advocates and a voice, and to be in a position where I could make history and bring a voice that had never existed at that level. I wanted it to be substantive. I wanted it to make a difference. And to his credit, he said right back immediately, I would have it no other way. I want you to bring your full self and your full voice to this role. I want you to be a true partner to me in this, in this effort, in this journey. And we got on the road. That happened about 6 months into my being a state rep.
Wow.
Yeah. I was sworn in January of 2017, maybe a little later. I think it was August of 2017. So about 7.5, almost 8 months. And we got together, and I can tell you, we are not only just so much enjoy this partnership in governance, but we're also friends. Yeah. And, I've just been so proud. Like, I don't know everything. I thought when we met that he would be a great governor, but I felt so good that looking back almost 7 years later at what we've been able to accomplish here in Illinois and the kind of leadership, bold, courageous leadership that he brings, I feel very fortunate that, we've been partnered and that he trusts me to be his partner in governance and to help get big things done for the people of Illinois.
So that partnership clearly has kind of worked over time, because he got you to, convinced you to be his running mate, and you did it.
I did.
And you ran and you won, and in 2019 you were sworn in. And we talked a little earlier about what the weight of that moment meant for you, but also now you have the eyes of the entire state on you, right? That's a much different level of accountability as an elected official.
Sure.
How did you decide what your focus areas would be in that capacity? Was it, obviously I know you have your passion areas that you talked about, but now in thinking about the entire state, did it broaden what you wanted your focus areas to be?
It did. I'll start by just saying that justice continued to be a theme. That's the theme of my whole life, advancing justice. And one of the first things that the governor did when he got into office is he signed an executive order creating what's called the Justice, Equity, and Opportunity Initiative. He housed it in the office of the lieutenant governor and under my leadership. And I'm proud of what we've been able to accomplish to really advance justice. I lead what's called the Restore, Reinvest, and Renew program. We have invested $288 million, more than that, more than $288 million in every corner of the state in communities that have been most harmed by the war on drugs. We're investing in violence prevention, youth development, economic development, civil legal aid, and reentry services. And we built that program from scratch, from the ground up, with the guidance from the Illinois General Assembly. And it is really, to me, a classic example of restorative justice. There was harm that was done to these communities. They've suffered decades of disinvestment. And the only way we're going to bring real justice, equity, or opportunity is to invest in these communities. So I'm proud of the work that we've done. But to go to your question about like, what about the rest of the state too? And although R3 is statewide, I took on agriculture.
I saw.
Yeah. I started an initiative called Ag Connects Us All, which it does. Like everybody eats, right? And agriculture is our state's largest industry. And what I noticed was that as I looked at the industry and looked at the food system here in Illinois, we are feeding the world, but I did not always see the representation from our communities in this number one industry in our state.
Absolutely.
And so people think the word young people here, they don't, they go in the grocery store, they don't always know where their milk comes from or where their egg comes from. Or they hear the word agriculture and the first thing that comes to people's mind is somebody sitting on a combine or on a tractor, which nothing wrong with that. Great. But there's agribusiness, there's agri-tech, there's agri-food, there's law, there's communications, there's so marketing, research and development. There is so much to the food system and agriculture and how to help our communities be tied to agriculture when so many of our communities are either food deserts or suffer from disproportionate food insecurity.
Yeah.
And that's whether they're urban or rural. So this was a way for me to say, we can all be tied to agriculture. We are all tied to agriculture. We need to make sure that there's more healthy, nutrient-dense food available for all of our communities. And one of the ways to do it is to make sure that more young people know the opportunities that are available in agriculture so that we not only change the face, but we make sure that every community can talk about their needs. And one thing I want to say that I'm proud of that we did as an administration is that FFA, it used to be called like Future Farmers of America, or 4-H club. Some people know what those are. They're really kind of cultivating the next generation of those in the agriculture industry.
Yeah.
We got rid of the fees. We paid all of the fees for FFA and 4-H, and I think Junior Manners, which is focused on students of color who are in agriculture. We went from 23,000 students who are in those programs to close to 43,000.
Wow.
In just a couple of years. And the reason why that's important is it increased the diversity and the representation. So, because some students couldn't afford the membership fees. So I know agriculture, South Side, Chicago, people don't know it, but I talked about great-great-grandfather William Stevens, and I also have a daughter who manages a farm and is engaged in agriculture. So this is important. Our food system and healthy food for our communities. Food is medicine, and we need to do more to make sure we have access to healthy, nutrient-dense food.
And just to talk about some of the other things that you've led on, because, I was doing my research.
Yes, you were. Yes, you were.
Many may not know, you talked about you leading the Justice, Equity, and Opportunity Initiative, but you've also been the chair of the Illinois Council on Women and Girls, the Illinois Rural Affairs Council, the Illinois Military Economic Development Council, and the Illinois River Coordinating Council. All very diverse things, completely different. But I loved how you've tapped into so many different arenas, many of whom it probably wouldn't have been expected that you would have tapped into.
Yeah.
But that you've tapped into so many different areas of interest that are impacting the state in so many different ways. So I wanted to make sure I gave credence to that too.
Yeah, and some of those are statutory and for the office of the lieutenant governor. But look, Illinois is a big state. I represent almost 13 million people, and it is a very diverse state. And I'm proud that for the last 7 years, I have represented the whole state.
Yeah.
I get around this state. And I've built so many incredible relationships. Chairing rural affairs, that's some people might not expect that, as you said.
Yeah.
But I go down to rural communities and we talk about not just that there's been this rural-urban divide, but how do we build the rural-urban bridge?
Yeah.
And say, if you don't have high-speed internet and they don't have it on the west side of Chicago, we need to get together. If you have food deserts and we do too, we need to get together. So I'm trying to think about how to build coalition and strengthen our advocacy by bringing our urban-rural connections together.
Yeah. Do you have any other, I think, key accomplishments that you want to make sure that you highlight as Lieutenant Governor? Because you're now wrapping 7.5 years on the ground, hitting the ground running.
I mean, so much. I mean, number one, just being able to work hand in hand with the governor on the things that we've accomplished, whether it's raising the minimum wage, protecting reproductive freedom, creating thousands of jobs, 7 consecutive balanced budgets, all of those things. But it's been an honor to see real progress in our state. I would say for the office of the Lieutenant Governor and what I've particularly done, I'm really proud of our Girls Lead program. You mentioned that I chair the Council on Women and Girls. We started a program for girls from 5th through 12th grade because a lot of people don't know this, but my very first time walking in the Illinois State Capitol was when I was elected as state representative.
Wow.
And I knew that more girls needed the opportunity to understand that their voices belonged in the halls of power and where decisions were being made and policies that affected their lives. So I started a program where they are matched and mentored and shadow me or other legislators. And then this year, we expanded it to general counsels and to chiefs of staff and all sorts of other incredible women in state government to really build those relationships and mentor girls. And it's been a phenomenal program. Also, Alzheimer's, we talked about our common connection to that program, and to that story that we both have had family members that we've lost to dementia. Mm-hmm. When I got into the office of the Lieutenant Governor, I made sure that we did something about that because one of the things that I knew was that, first of all, so many people share that story. And the story is different based upon where you live, the community you come from, and your access to healthcare and resources.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to talk to caregivers because, as I said before, caregiving is hard. And I launched a campaign called Through Our Eyes, where I went all around the state to talk to caregivers. And because of that work, Illinois, some legislation that I advanced, Illinois became the first state in the nation to train physicians. Required physicians are trained on how to screen for dementia. And I worked with the Alzheimer's Association Illinois chapter because my mom went to the doctor, but they did not catch the dementia early on. And so by the time we knew she had dementia really fully, there was so much planning we could have done as a family to make it caregiving takes a financial toll.
Yeah. And
so there could have been a lot more that we could have done to be prepared and get the resources. So now in Illinois, we have to do that. We also now in Illinois cover for state supported insurance, cover FDA approved drugs and prescription drugs for dementia and Alzheimer's. I just went to Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago to accept an award on behalf of the state of Illinois because we are leading in that space. And I'll just say one more thing, Corey, because this is important to me. We all know that Black women are 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications. And I was proud to lead the Birth Equity Initiative for our administration. I met with, brought Black women doulas and midwives to say, how do we address this? I remember calling the governor, not the doctor, and saying, Governor, I know we're protecting reproductive freedom and we're doing all this, but Black women are still dying. And so I ended up leading this effort. We now cover doulas, midwives, lactation consultants, whether it's Medicaid or private insurance, no copay. We make sure that you get 1 year postpartum home visits. We make sure that we are, we put money towards the South Side, $1 million South Side Birthing Center, and we're helping with address diaper need, because 50% of families in America cannot afford clean diapers. Mm-hmm. These are all in a child tax credit, putting a little money in people's pockets. A young family who's trying to take care of their baby, just a little more money in their pocket can go a long way to reducing stress and helping their mental health. So I'm proud of the things that I've been able to lead in this administration, and I look forward to taking that same kind of leadership to Washington, D.C. I believe that Illinois really is the blueprint of what can be accomplished, and I look forward to continuing the work.
So that's the perfect segue to what you're doing now. Earlier this summer, you decided to throw your name in the hat and run for the U.S. Senate seat that's now held by soon to be outgoing United States Senator Dick Durbin.
Yes.
And so you're closing out your second term as lieutenant governor. Walk us through not only what made you decide to make the leap into the U.S. Senate race, but also what would you prioritize, and why should the voters of Illinois vote for Juliana Stratton to be their next U.S. Senator?
Yeah, well, first of all, think about what I said when I said 10 years ago, caring for my mom, I saw a need, and I stepped up to meet the need because healthcare was being stripped away.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are in 2025, 10 years later, and what do we see happening? Healthcare being stripped away from some of our most vulnerable Americans.
Yeah.
And I see a need, and I stepped up to meet that need. And, it has been an incredible journey going around the state. When people ask me, like, when I say, what are you looking for? I can tell you honestly that people they do have lots of policy ideas and things they want to see happen. But more than anything, what people say is, I want someone who is going to stand up and fight for me.
Mm-hmm.
I hear that more than anything. And what I'm proud that I can do is look them back in the eye and say, I will be that fighter for you. These are scary times. Look at what's happening in our world right now.
Yeah.
Look at the 5-alarm fire that's been ignited by Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans, stripping away health care, taking food out of the mouths of hungry children, raising costs for everyday middle class and working class families. It is a mess. Mm-hmm. And we need steady, strong leadership. I want to prioritize the things that we've done here. We have made life more affordable. We have made sure that we've expanded access to opportunity for Illinoisans, and we've protected and defended our rights and freedoms, and those are under threat right now by this administration. That's what I want to do in Washington, D.C. I want to be the same kind of leader I've been for all of these years here in Illinois, making sure that government works for the people, that their voices are centered. And when it comes to, why they should support me, what I will say, and this is the truth, I'm going to work hard to earn your support because I don't take it for granted. I believe that I've been the kind of leader that we need in Washington, and I will be that kind of leader. I work hard, and I also have gotten big things done. I've represented the entire state of Illinois, and I've ran twice and won twice statewide. That's important.
Yeah.
And I bring my experience as a mediator that I talked about, as a legislator that I talked about, and as the executive branch. But what's most important for me is that people know that I want to earn your support and that I don't take it for granted. I want it. Don't get me wrong. But I want you to know what I've done, and I hope this conversation has helped you to know that.
2 more questions, because I know you're incredibly busy. As you look back on your life and career, what do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, goodness. I would say that when I look back on my life and career, most of my legacy that I want, there are things that I have accomplished, but I always say that what's more important than what I do is who I am. Mm-hmm. And I always want my legacy to be that people would know that I'm someone who was authentically me, genuine, who really came from this heart space of wanting to uplift and inspire everyone that I came in contact with. The accomplishments, the things that I've gotten done are important to me, and I'm grateful to have had a part in it. But who I am, and I think who we are, the kind of people we are we genuine? Are we kind? Are we honest? Are we truthful? Do we care about other people? That is always what I want to be known for. Mm-hmm. When it comes to an actual something that I have done, I think about just so many rights that have been under attack. And right now, voting rights are one of those areas. And one of the bills that I passed as a legislator was to make sure that people who are detained pre-trial have the right to vote. People who are pretrial detainees have not been convicted. and they were being denied the right to vote here in Illinois. I passed that bill. The previous governor vetoed a part of it. So right when I was heading over to the lieutenant governor role, so somebody else got it over the finish line.
Yeah.
But it was work that I did with just a big coalition to make sure that people could make their voices heard, because your vote matters. And it matters especially right now. And I know we've got to do more to make sure that people feel like their vote matters, that when they vote, that there's actual change. And that's what I'm inspired by. But that really was something that that's a part of my legacy.
Yeah.
No school-based booking station, that's a part of my legacy. So I guess what I'm saying is that I've helped make the world a more just place. That's what I want to be known for.
I love that. Last question is, who is Juliana Stratton in your own words?
Who is Juliana Stratton I kind of just described her in that last question, not knowing, but Juliana Stratton is Henry and Velma's daughter. She is Brian's wife. She's a mom to 4 incredible daughters. And she is someone who is a spiritual being having an earthly experience, trying to bring my gifts to the world to make it a better place for the next generation.
Well, let me tell you who Juliana Stratton is to me. Not only a friend, but a trailblazer, somebody that I've looked up to and been inspired by your career, by the way that you serve, authentically. And I think anybody who knows you sees that, from you leading on legislative issues to you hanging out at Pier 31, listening to some house music.
That's right.
I love the fact that you are a legislator that is leading authentically, and it inspires, I know, not only myself, but so many of my contemporaries that are coming up to that there is no one way to lead, that you can lead being yourself, and that's okay. And so I wanted, on behalf of everybody, I wanted to say thank you for that.
Well, thank you. And thank you for saying that, because you may know that I was told that there's certain rules in terms of as an elected official. And I think being yourself is the best way for all of us to be. And I've really enjoyed this conversation to talk about who I am. And thank you for being who you are as well.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on In My Own Words. This episode of In My Own Words is sponsored by Williams Inn Pizza and Sports Bar. Williams Inn Pizza and Sports Bar, a Chicago original since 1969, home of the legendary deep dish, wings, and good vibes. Williams Inn is where community, flavor, and culture come together. Stop by 2210 South Michigan Avenue or order online at williamsinnpizza.com.